Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. My name is Digvijoy Ghose Rohan and I will be presenting to you today about my research project, which is masculine role as self-silencing. A bit about myself. So I've completed my bachelor's degree in psychology, which inspired me to go into counseling. And now I'm doing my master's degree in counseling. My therapeutic philosophy stems from a humanistic and psychodynamic approach, and this informs my practice, where I practice an integrative person-centered approach, which kind of focuses on the individual story from their present life and their past patterns of relating, which forms their meaning in life. And and I feel like my therapeutic philosophy has influenced me in choosing my research project. My research group is looking into self-silencing behaviors and self-silencing tendencies. The self-silencing theory was developed to understand depression in women. So, like Jack and Dale conceptualized that women have a tendency to silence themselves in their intimate partner relationship to keep the harmony in the relationship. And um, due to like self-silencing and engaging in prolonged self-silencing tendencies, women develop depression. However, the self-silencing concept has been developed since its origin. Um, like multiple researches has been conducted, and they have found that self-silencing is also present in men and other gender minority groups as well. And research extensively by Kramer and colleagues found that men are more likely to score higher on self-silencing than women. So we wanted to look into why might that be the case, and if women's traditional gender roles of like silencing themselves to keeping the harmony of the relationship and being being passive and being submissive, if that's the case, and men are also found to score higher on self-silencing behavior, so will traditional masculine roles have an impact on that? And the traditional masculine roles, it's been looked into by Snell, by Thompson and Fleck, and they suggested that men are expected to be tough, non-affectionate, and like they need to have a strive for success. Um, and these are, bear in mind, these are societal views of how men needs to be, just how traditional women's gender role were, like the societal view of how a certain individual has to be. So the societal norms view this emotional expression of men. If men have like have the negative emotions and they want to express that and show their love and affection, that is deemed to be as weak. And research found that these conforming to these masculine roles have a negative impact on men's health and their relationships. So the challenges that men face around expressing their emotions due to adhering to the traditional masculine roles could be seen as self-silencing, and it is kind of the usual narrative that men has of keeping it to themselves and being strong, and like a prolonged exposure and prolonged practice of this then leads to like having reduced help-seeking behaviors, as in and not seeking counseling for if they have any emotional distress. And this has been identified as a barrier. The traditional masculine roles and adhering to that, conforming to the traditional masculine norms, has been identified as a barrier to help-seeking in men. And research also suggests that men with low self-compassion show higher stigma towards help-seeking behaviors. However, we also found that, like when we are doing the background research, found that Kramer and colleagues found that masculine, like people, like men especially, who score higher on masculine traits, score lower on self-silencing traits, which was an interesting finding. So we wanted to look at how self-compassion may influence this relationship of masculinity and self-silencing tendencies. Self-compassion is the ability to treat oneself with kindness and understanding when faced with distress, suffering, or failure. It was found that self-compassion is effective in reducing defensiveness, self-blame, and it promotes help-seeking behaviors. And research also suggested that self-compassion may protect men from engaging in self-criticism and like some self-restrictive activities. So we wanted to see the effect of masculine roles in self-silencing behaviors, and we also wanted to see the self-compassion's influence in it. Very few research have been conducted to see how masculine roles impact self-silencing behaviors, and explicitly, there hasn't been any research conducted to see masculine roles' impact on self-silencing behaviors and how self-compassion may influence the relationship. So, our first hypothesis is that masculine roles are expected to correlate positively with self-silencing behaviors. Secondly, self-compassion is expected to have an inverse relationship with masculine roles and self-silencing. And our final hypothesis is that the masculine roles will have a predictive relationship with self-silencing tendencies. In our study, we had 61 participants, 41 female and 20 male. The age of the participants ranged from 18 to 48, with a median age of 21. Our design of the study was cross-sectional, which means the data was collected at one single point in time. And the measures included 3 questionnaires and 1 demographic form. The demographic form included the information of age, gender, sexuality, relationship status, and ethnicity. Our first measure was silencing the self scale, which has 4 subscales. Externalized self perception, which is characterized by the judging of oneself based on the external standards. The second is care as self sacrifice, where an individual might put others' needs in front of their own. Silencing the self is pretty self explanatory, it's the act of silencing oneself. And divided self, you can understand it by a conflict, a dissonance between one's inner self and one's outer self. Masculine role inventory measures 3 subscales, which is the restrictive emotionality, inhibited affection scale, and the success preoccupation. Restrictive emotionality is basically restricted oneself from expressing their emotional environment and what they're feeling. Inhibited affection is inhibiting your expression of love to others. And the success preoccupation, you could see it as a hustle and grind culture, like the strive for success. And the self-compassion scale has 6 subscales, which is like self-judgment, isolation, over-identification, which these 3 subscales kind of measure and the negative part of it, and the common humanities, self-kindness and mindfulness captures the self-compassion, the positive side of the concept self-compassion. We recruited our participants from SONA program, which is a university students participation program where mostly psychology students participate in SONA, and we get data from there. And we also gather data from social media. Our advertisement of the study included a link, which is a Qualtrics link, and if you press that link, that takes you to the Qualtrics webpage, which has the information sheet, the consent form, and the questionnaires. When the participants filled out the questionnaire and completed the form, they were received a debrief form. And after the data collection process was done, they were all compiled into an Excel spreadsheet, and they were analyzed in SPSS. The analysis component contained the normality test, descriptive tests, and t-test and correlation test. And based on the correlational results, we conducted a regression analysis to see the predictive power of the correlations. So we found that our data was normally distributed, and a t-test showed that there was no significant effect of gender in the self-silencing scale and the self-compassion scale, but we found a significant effect of gender in the masculine role scale. We found that males are more likely to score higher than females in the success preoccupation scale. Males were more likely to score higher on the restrictive emotionality scale, and one-way ANOVA interestingly showed that participants who were single were more likely to score higher on masculine role inventory than participants who were in a relationship. And you can see these in the graphs that's shown here. Like you can see the difference of males and female data there. So we conducted a correlational analysis between all the scales and the subscales, and we found that self-compassion didn't have any significant effect of correlation between any of the other variables. However, we found a moderate positive correlation between masculine role scale and the self-silencing scale. So because of the correlational results from like in masculine role and self-silencing, we thought of doing a regressional analysis to find that if because they are correlating the masculine role and the self-silencing, could masculine role also account for any change in the self-silencing scale? So we conducted regressional analysis, and we found that restrictive emotionality could account for 9.1% of the change in externalized self-perception. Success preoccupation and restrictive emotionality can account for 27.3% of the variance, like variance meaning change in this silencing the self scale. And we found that success preoccupation, inhibited affection, and restrictive emotionality, pretty much the whole masculine role scale, can account for 40.5%, over like nearly half of the variance in divided self scale, meaning that the masculine role scale, like any change in masculine role scale, could like predict half of the change in divided self scale. So just to refresh the hypothesis, we hypothesized that masculine roles and self-silencing would be positively correlated, which we found. Secondly, the self-compassion is expected to have an inverse relationship with masculine role and self-silencing. We didn't find that. And the final hypothesis, that masculine role will have a predictive relationship with self-silencing tendencies, and we did find that. Although we have to reject our second hypothesis, our findings resonate with previous research where they found that self-compassion showed small to no significant relationship with masculine norms. However, self-compassion was found to have a direct negative relationship with help-seeking behaviors, and masculine roles were associated with reduced help-seeking behaviors. So, like, you could connect the dot, and reduced help-seeking behaviors could be conceptualized as a self-silencing act where individual restricts their emotional expression to be strong, and that is the societal view of how a man should be. So it kind of like infers you can kind of like see that self-compassion may be a valuable tool in coping with individual like distress, and like you have tough times and like your distressing emotions and situations. Self-compassion could be a valuable tool for that. However, when it comes to traditional masculine roles and self-silencing behaviors, it's not self-compassion that could be like influencing the relationship. Could be cultural norms, with the societal expectation on like for one, cultural expectation, the cultural rituals and stuff, and how we are shaped to think and how we are shaped to view the world. That could be like directly influencing this relationship of traditional masculine roles and self-silencing attitudes, not self-compassion. And we found a significant positive relationship with masculine roles and self-silencing. Although this contrasts previous finding where they found the masculinity is inversely related with self-silencing behaviors, it kind of supports the link that adhering to masculine roles contributes to the experience of gender role conflict. Well, the idea is that the societal norms that characterize men's emotional expression as weak, that leads to restrictive emotions in men, like men restricting their emotions, them not expressing their love, and kind of being that hustle and grind culture. It's like keep it to themselves. That then later on leads to self-silencing behaviors, and research has found that this gender role conflict, kind of not being happy with how we're feeling and kind of like keeping it down, this then later on has negative consequences. So we explored this relationship further, and we found that success preoccupation has a significant relationship with self-silencing. Success preoccupation, when you put it in context with the masculine roles, you can see like this that innate drive for success, that innate drive for achieving more and more, and like putting these goals always at the front of your mind, this leads to like a feeling of inadequacy, like that innate pressure to succeed, which can lead to a feeling of inadequacy, self doubt, self judgment, and self criticism, which is kind of shown in previous research. And and when you put it in context with masculine roles, it also comes with that restrictive emotionality. And when that happens, like you have these feelings and you keep it to yourself, and you're more likely to keep it to yourself because you don't want to express it to the world, because when you do that, the society will see you as weak. And when that happens, that that leads to self-silencing, and prolonged self-silencing could have negative effects. And previous research has also found that like this type of success preoccupation, like this can lead to perfectionism, and perfectionism, like both kinds, like the self-perfectionism or goal-oriented perfectionism, could be a significant predictor of self-silencing. Restrictive emotionality, which is pretty much the hallmark of masculine roles, was found to be a significant predictor of the self-silencing tendencies. This could be due to like conforming to this societal norms to avoid negative reaction from people, because the if you show emotions as a man, that could be seen as weak. But bear in mind, that's the traditional masculine role. And research suggested that gender role conflict, or the tension that arises due to the discrepancies between traditional masculine role and a man's personal beliefs, values, this can lead to like self-silencing. We found inhibited affection to be a significant predictor for a divided self. So you can kind of see, like, when you put it in context, the restrictive emotionality, success preoccupation, and the inhibited affection, they predict self-silencing tendencies in an individual. And this inhibited affection, like the individual inhibiting their feelings of love and affection, like restricting these emotions, and this can lead to a feeling of discontent and a disconnection between one's true emotions and the emotions that we show. So our study kind of strongly suggests that masculine roles are predicting self-silencing behaviors. And with that 50, like nearly 50% of the variance that we've found in our results, it is seen to be a strong predictor. We didn't find any relationship of masculine roles and care as self-sacrifice, which is interesting, because previous research by Duarte and Thompson, they found that men are more likely to score higher on care as self-sacrifice. This could be seen as a masculine role, as oh yes, I sacrificed because of my relationship, and that could be seen as a form of care. However, our research didn't indicate any of these effects. Uh, our research also suggests that self-silencing is not unique to females or males. It's kind of it's a unified concept for males, females, and other gender identities. However, we found that men and women score differently in masculine role scales, which was expected and which kind of resonates previous findings. So, what is the take-home message from our study? So it's a traditional masculine role, such as emotional restrictions, holding back on expressing love and affection, the chase for success, predicts and or may predict self-silencing tendencies, and these characteristics may have a negative effect in a person's life. So our study may inform the counselors and the mental health professionals to look into self-silencing behaviors from a different perspective, especially for men's mental health, because maybe looking into self-silencing tendencies, or the like how they conform to their masculine roles, it might answer some questions about their mental health. Thank you. And if you have any questions, don't forget to put them in the comment section below.